There's a quiet moment most people don't talk about. It doesn't happen when you first lie down, and it doesn't happen when you're fully asleep. It lives somewhere in between. You're already in bed. The lights are off. The room is still. Your body has stopped moving, but something inside you hasn't quite followed. You're not thinking about anything in particular. There's no obvious worry, no clear thought to chase. And yet, you're not resting either. It feels like you're hovering just above sleep, close enough to feel it, but not close enough to fall into it. And then, almost without effort, a quiet question appears. Why does my body feel tired, but not ready to let go? If that moment feels familiar, you're not alone. Many people experience it night after night, especially later in life. Not as a struggle, not as a problem, but as a subtle gap. A space where the body has slowed down, but hasn't fully surrendered. And maybe the most surprising part is this. It's not restlessness. It's unfinished stillness. It's not that your body is refusing sleep. Your body isn't resisting sleep. It's waiting for clarity. If you've ever felt that quiet gap between being tired and actually falling asleep, consider liking and subscribing if this speaks to you. There's a moment just before sleep that often goes unnoticed. It's not about closing your eyes. It's not about turning off the lights. It's something quieter than that. A transition that doesn't always happen automatically. A shift that your body waits for, even if you don't realize it. We often think sleep begins when we decide to go to bed. But sleep doesn't begin with closing your eyes. It begins with letting go of control. And sometimes, without meaning to, we hold on to just a little bit of control, even after everything else has slowed down. That's where the experience begins. Michael had been lying still for a few minutes. The digital clock beside his bed read 10:42 p.m. The faint hum of the air conditioner filled the room. His hands rested gently on his stomach. His legs were stretched out. From the outside, he looked completely at rest. But if you looked closer, there was a subtle tension in his shoulders. Not enough to feel uncomfortable. Not enough to notice right away. Just a quiet holding, as if his body hadn't quite received permission to soften completely. He wasn't trying to stay awake. He wasn't thinking about his day. But something inside him was still slightly braced. It lasted only a few seconds. 3, maybe 5. A barely noticeable pause where the body waits for a clearer signal. This is often the first transition point. When the body has arrived in bed, but hasn't fully arrived in rest. It's not resistance. It's not anxiety. It's simply that one part of the body is still holding on to readiness. The military sleep technique is often described as a way to fall asleep quickly. But underneath that description, it's really something else. It's a way of sending a clear message to the body. A message that says, you don't need to stay ready anymore. In that quiet moment, Michael noticed something small. His shoulders were slightly lifted, just a fraction. He hadn't realized it until then, and without trying to fix anything, he let them drop. Just a little. Not forced, not exaggerated. Just enough to allow gravity to do its work. 2 seconds, maybe 3. And something shifted, not dramatically, not instantly, but noticeably enough that his body understood. It no longer needed to hold that position. Sometimes, sleep begins not with a big change, but with a very small release. And in that moment, a simple realization appeared. I wasn't tense, but I wasn't fully letting go either. A few minutes later, in another home, Daniel lay on his side. The room was darker here. A small lamp in the corner cast a soft glow against the wall. The house was quiet, except for the distant ticking of a clock. His eyes were closed. His breathing had slowed. Everything seemed ready. But beneath the surface, there was a subtle awareness still active. Not a thought, not a worry. Just a quiet monitoring of the space around him. He could sense the room, the temperature, the faint sounds. Even with his eyes closed, something inside him was still watching. This is another transition point, when the eyes are closed, but the mind hasn't fully stepped away from its role of observing. It's not alertness in the usual sense. It's softer than that. More like a habit of staying slightly aware, just in case. Again, this isn't something to fix. It's something to recognize. Your body isn't resisting sleep. It's waiting for clarity. Daniel noticed it in a very small way. His jaw was slightly tight. Not clenched, just held. He hadn't realized it. And in that moment, he allowed it to soften. Just a fraction. Enough for the teeth to separate slightly. Enough for the muscles to release their quiet hold. 2 seconds. No effort. And with that small release, the sense of monitoring began to fade. The body no longer needed to stay partially engaged. Sometimes, the mind doesn't need to be told to stop. It simply follows the body when the body lets go. And in that stillness, a quiet understanding emerged. I wasn't awake, but I wasn't letting myself sleep either. Across town, Robert lay on his back, the ceiling above him barely visible in the darkness. His breathing had slowed down over the past few minutes. In and out. Steady. Calm. But there was something slightly unfinished about it. Each breath was shallow, not strained, not uncomfortable, just not fully complete. This is another subtle moment, when the breath begins to slow, but hasn't yet deepened into rest. The body is close, very close, but still holding a small amount of control over the rhythm. The military sleep technique doesn't force the breath. It doesn't ask you to change it dramatically. It simply invites a clearer signal. Robert noticed that his exhale ended a little too soon, just a fraction early, as if his body was still maintaining a gentle sense of readiness. So he allowed one breath to extend, just slightly longer on the way out. Not deep, not forced, just a soft, longer release. 2 seconds more than before, and something responded. His chest softened. His breathing found a quieter rhythm, without effort. The body understood that it didn't need to regulate every moment. Sometimes, the signal to rest isn't in how you breathe in, but in how completely you allow yourself to breathe out. And in that space, a simple realization appeared. It's not that I couldn't relax. I just hadn't fully let the breath finish. Not far away, Thomas lay with his hands resting by his sides. The room was completely dark now. The world outside had quieted. His body was still, no movement, no adjustment. But his mind was still holding a role. Not thinking, not worrying, just maintaining a quiet sense of control, as if it needed to stay slightly involved, just to make sure everything was okay. This is one of the most subtle transition points, when the body is ready, but the mind hasn't stepped out of its position yet. It's not obvious. It doesn't feel like thinking. It feels like a quiet presence, a background awareness that hasn't turned off. The military sleep technique approaches this differently. It doesn't try to silence the mind. It simply removes the need for control. Thomas noticed it when he felt a slight tension in his hands. His fingers weren't gripping anything, but they weren't fully relaxed either. So he allowed them to loosen, just a little, letting the fingers curl naturally, without direction. 2 seconds, and something changed. The mind didn't need to hold that role anymore. It followed the body into rest. Sleep doesn't come from forcing the mind to stop. It comes from showing the body that nothing needs to be managed. And in that quiet shift, a realization surfaced. I was still in charge, even though there was nothing left to do. Later that night, in a softly lit bedroom, James adjusted his pillow slightly. He had been close to sleep several times already. Each time, it almost happened. And then something pulled him back. Not a thought, not a sound. Just a subtle sense that something was still unfinished. This is the final transition point. When everything is ready, but the body is still waiting for a signal that it's safe to let go completely. It's not fear. It's not tension. It's simply a pause, a moment where the system checks one last time. James noticed it in his neck, a slight holding, not uncomfortable, just present. And instead of trying to sleep, he allowed that area to soften. Just a small release, a gentle drop, 2 seconds. And in that moment, the waiting ended. The body no longer needed confirmation. It understood. Sleep isn't something that happens to you. It's something that begins when your body recognizes that nothing needs to be held anymore. And in that final realization, a quiet truth appeared. I wasn't waiting for sleep. I was waiting to stop holding on. What many people call the military sleep technique isn't really about speed. It isn't about falling asleep in seconds. It's about clarity. It's about giving your body a clear, unmistakable signal that the day is over, that there's nothing left to monitor, nothing left to control. It's not a checklist. It's not a routine you have to follow perfectly. It's a series of very small moments, moments where you notice and gently release. A shoulder that lowers, a jaw that softens, a breath that completes, a hand that lets go, a neck that relaxes. Each one is only a few seconds, but together they form a message, and the body understands that message more clearly than any thought. It's not that you can't sleep. It's that your body is waiting for a clearer signal to begin. Sleep doesn't respond to effort. It responds to permission. And sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is less. Have you ever felt like your body is ready for sleep, but something inside you is still quietly holding on? If this felt familiar, consider sharing your experience in the comments. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear tonight. And if this kind of quiet understanding resonates with you, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to Senior Wisdom for more gentle insights like this. Thank you for being here, truly. Wishing you a night where nothing needs to be controlled and everything can simply rest.